Yeah.
It's not the perfectly appropriate title, but it is not part of this, so it's fine. Click. What is this about? The one, next slide. When we say UDDT, what does it mean? It means urine diversion and dry toilet. Dry, the second D for dry could also be desiccation, dehydration, doesn't matter. You find it under different names in the internet, in the publications. Why urine diversion would be the first curious inquiry. Why dry toilet? Why sanitation at all? What is sanitation? What do you mean by sanitation? And then we talk about flush toilet technology versus everything which is ecological sanitation technology, including the UDDT, the urine diversion dry toilet, pros and cons. Some slides about the work of my team, EcoPro, and a few challenges for the world in general, for India, for Auroville. Next slide. Why urine diversion? You have to differentiate between urine and feces. Once I can translate feces and then it's maybe good. Feces means shit. That's stool. But in my slideshow it usually says feces, so just to know what we are talking about. There's a big difference between urine and feces and shit, and there's a big difference how we have to handle the two excreta of Homo sapiens, of all mammals, and most mammals. Feces, that's the point. Feces is a possible carrier of pathogens. What does pathogen mean? Disease-causing agents. Pathology, pathos means the suffering, the disease. Generating. So pathogens means little bugs, germs, whatsoever, that trigger diseases. So it is viruses, it is bacteria, it is typically also parasites, and we come back to this one again and again. That is a particular parasite. Some of you might know it from experience. It's called the roundworm. In Tamil, Nagapuchi. In German, Spulwurm. In Latin, Ascaris. So that's a nasty one. Actually not very dangerous, but it can be a problem. Feces, feces is a possible carrier of disease-causing microbiota and parasites.
And urine isn't?
Urine in our part of the world is not. Okay. That's important. Next slide. What is urine? Urine is a filtrate of human blood in the kidney. So the kidney sorts out what should go out, what should be kept in, the salt levels, the different salt levels, the different mineral levels, all this is part of the kidney. The kidney is also one of the major organs to detoxify, to get rid of things you have to get rid of. All the breakdown of, let's say, medicines, but not only medicines, all kind of other stuff, which is in our food, if it is not really from a superbly pure organic soil. Where is that in the world? Because there's a general environmental oneness, unfortunately. So it's pretty, in the kidney itself is actually sterile. It has no microbes. In the bladder, it will get a few. In the urethra, the passage from bladder out, it will have some more. So what we pee might not be perfectly sterile, but pretty clean. And that means uncontaminated from feces, you can drink it. You don't have to. You can use it freely as fertilizer. And I would always say you better do. It has lots of interesting uses all through history, last 3,000 years. Definitely we have records that it was used in tannery, in treatment of wool, in the dyeing of textiles. as a cleaning agent because of the urea and the uric acid in the urine. In dermatological applications, in cosmetic applications, one of the, what is it called? The hair removal cream. One is based on, I think, what is it? Urea, I think.
Yeah.
And of course, it is interesting for diagnostics. You can not only look at the urine of one person and say what's going on in that metabolism, in that turnover. You can also take the urine from a whole group, from a whole town, and these examinations, these surveys have been made. For example, they know that Milano seems to take, the town in Italy has a certain amount of one truck going through the sewage, and Cologne or Düsseldorf will have another one. Here it is more the ecstasy, and there it is more the whatsoever, cocaine. And there are weekend highs and there are seasonal highs, so you can tell from the urine of a community what's going on in that body of a community. Fascinating. Next slide. I said you can deal with urine freely. Drink it, wash your hair. This picture is from Ethiopia. Boy standing under the urine stream of a cow. I have seen this happening in Auroville on a farm, 1976, 77. The cow started pissing. One of the women of the farm, the local helpers, screamed in ecstasy, ran there and washed her hair, which was probably good. Of course, she will rinse it afterwards, like you do with shampoo. But it is a good hair wash. Yes, you wanted to ask?
Like nutritionally, like actually, because I know that in our
You
country it's also
don't nourish typically hair and by shampoos. That is one part of the shampoo advertisement. But to get it smooth again, not greasy, not sticky, not stuck together, to clean it, it's a brilliant agent. Okay. On the side, it's not important for our lecture. The point is, you can deal with urine relaxedly. You don't have to get urine, but you can get human shit. You may get, maybe you should. Next slide. So, please, next one. And let's click. Examples, click again. This is Morarji Desai, Prime Minister of India from 1977 to 79. He talked to, I think, an American journalist and told him that he drinks his daily morning urine, and that went through the press. The Indian Prime Minister drinks his own urine. So what? There are another million people on the globe that drink their own urine. Salinger, the author of Catcher in the Rye, was one of them. And most of them get very old. Morarji Desai was, what is it, where is it, life dates? Almost 100. Yes. And Salinger also about 90 or something. There's nothing wrong about drinking urine. So now you're all convinced you want to hold drink urine. Next slide. Feces, I said, is a possible carrier of pathogens, of disease carrying, of disease causing microbes, microbiota. Hence the need for sanitizing or for treating it, containing it and treating it before you say, let's spread it again. There are many ways of doing that, of treating stool, feces. Many ways. One is burning it. Then it is sterile. Pathogens do not survive the heat. Cooking it, boiling it, but then you also have very little left, right? Or sanitizer applications, which is another way of dealing with it, which I would not recommend, but it is done widely all over the globe. Or composting under specific conditions. That means if the composting is kept, has that typical thermophilic phase, high heat phase, for, I don't remember how long, 4 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't remember, above 60 degree, it is doing the job. But if you want to sanitize your feces through composting, you would have to apply the thermometer every day in your shit to see, does it have the right temperature? Then you can be safe after 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know who does it like this. I'm not aware of anybody personally. And it might not be a nice procedure to stick the thermometer into your fresh shit every day again. You know now it is composted properly. But there are many ways to go about feces sanitizing. Not all of them are handy, are convenient, are easy to teach and easy to control. The easiest,
What temperature?
60 degrees.
60.
That is also when the seeds in your compost, the wheat seeds are not cannot germinate anymore.
Okay.
Centigrade?
60 centigrade, of course, centigrade. So I don't know what is in Fahrenheit. We have to do it. The simplest way of dealing with feces and the lowest low-tech technology is let it get dry. Let it just dry. Let it just evaporate its moisture content, and everything else will also die down. And within a few weeks, most of the pathogens are done with. They don't survive even a simple trying. I think the Vibrio cholerae, which causes cholera, or the Salmonella typhi, which causes typhoid fever. Within Vibrio cholerae, probably within a few weeks, and probably the Salmonella after at least 2-3 months, it's all done, it's over. But there's one very obstinate survivor, and that is the egg, the ovum, the egg of the roundworm, of the Nagapuchi, of the Ascaris, of which I showed you that bundle of earthworm-like parasites. It's not fun to have an Ascaris, I think, from experience. That is why the World Health Organization recommends that under tropical ambient temperatures, which means we are always between 20 and 40 degrees centigrade. Lowest in winter is 19, 18 in a cold winter morning in Auroville. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And in summer, 40, 41, 40, 42. So between 20 and 40 ambient temperature, you should let feces dry for 12 to 18 months. Somewhere I find it is 18 months, others see it a bit more relaxed, say 12 should do the trick. But this is World Health Organization recommendations, and I don't have the research to say you are all wrong. It can be done in 11 or 10 or 9 or 8 months. The stool that gets dried looks like composted something within a few weeks. It doesn't mean it is hygienically safe. So I'm talking from the point of view what recommendation I can give to the public. What you do in your private scenario, that's your deal, that's your business, and it is your risks. But as a recommendation for a community or for a village or a town or a panchayat, whatsoever, I have to come up with official figures that have some recorded background in scientific research. It looks good after 3 months, but it's not safe. Next slide. Why is sanitation? Well, human feces, I said, it spreads diseases. And how does it spread it? Fingers, food, drinks, fluids, sewage, wastewater, flies, wind. There are many ways that human feces contaminates something and then it spreads. Lack of sanitation is a big issue. It is maybe the biggest public health issue over the whole globe. Lack of sanitation causes a high incidence of disease and death, typically of small children under 5 years, causes epidemics and pandemics. Nowadays, everything becomes a pandemic because we are globally networked. We carve today here and we fly to San Francisco and everybody carves in San Francisco. That's called a pandemic, if it catches a few more. It contributes to child malnutrition, especially in India, not only in India. It leads for the children who are sick, it leads to loss of schooling. For adults, it leads to loss of work, of wages. For the nation, it leads to loss of productivity and of wealth. And there is a study from, I think, 2012 or 15 that India loses about 65 billion US dollars per year due to lack of sanitation. I don't know how they come up with that figure, but it's huge. The losses are huge. That is why all governments who face that issue have sanitation programs. In India, I know latest since the 1980s, there are sanitation programs. Yes, you want to say that?
What is the number of deaths per year in India, for example?
Of deaths per year, a few lakhs. A few lakhs, yes. I think it is 4 or 5 lakhs in India. In India.
Mostly children.
Mostly children. It is several a day, every few minutes, or 2 an hour, or something like that. But you see, these figures are all debatable. You have a figure from UNICEF of 2012 or 11, and then you have one from the Indian government of 1 year before, and then now you have no figure at all, and you don't know exactly where we are. And we have the claims that everything is hunky-dory and everybody is provided with sanitation. That's another issue. You wanted to ask something?
Yeah, I was just wondering, because you said about desiccating the feces after 18 months, but then what do you do with it? What's the aim of?
The point is that after 12 to 18 months, that feces, which is completely dry, is safe to handle.
Yeah, but what do you do? I mean,
You can co-compost it or use it as a cheap compost, not a high quality. We come to that. It's a good question. You're listening. It's good. The point is that the latest of these sanitation programs was the Sewage mission, which came to its conclusion and its celebrated success in 2019, a success of which I'm not at all convinced. But the point is, of course, it has a massive impact. It was financially the biggest program ever that the Indian government had launched. And of course, they built millions of toilets. And of course, a few of them might even be usable and might even be used. So yes, there was an impact. But it has not resolved the problem of open defecation in this country. That's, of course, fooling oneself to make that statement. Next slide. Sanitation, hold on.
okay.
Sanitation means the hygienic management of human excreta. And it is also well visible in the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. Under goal number 6, a subcategory, it is in water, it is in waste management, it pops up in several parts. You wanted to say what is it?
Okay. So with the feces, when it's in the bathroom toilet, how would it, like, if you don't keep it there, so you would keep it there for up to a year or 18 months, right? And how, if you don't?
You are so well onto it. Wait, I come to it. I come to it. The problem is sanitation has 2 problems, 2 needs, 2 challenges. And the first one is this reduction or elimination of the risk of spreading diseases, of spreading pathogens. So if you talk about sanitation, you think hygiene, don't spread diseases. Yes, definitely, it's a need. Because lack of sanitation gives a lot of problems worldwide. But there's another one. The cycling of nutrients. And with nutrients, I mean the chemical basic elements which you would find in the periodic table of chemical elements, starting with hydrogen all the way to the above 100 atomic weight, etc. The nutrients which we take in, we take from where? We take from soils, and they should be cycled back into soils. So That is why I write here the cycling of nutrients. That is, the nutrients in food are sourced from soils, hence the excreta must be returned to soils. Because the excreta, the nutrients in the excreta are more or less the same with the nutrients in our food. If they are not the same, and I'm an adult and I don't grow anymore vertically, I can only grow horizontally. If I take so much milk or cheese per day, so much calcium measurable in grams, and I don't excrete a similar amount of calcium, what happens with all that 5 grams calcium every day? Do I grow bones or do I grow horns or what is going on? It has to be in balance. We are, our organisms, all defined living organisms, biological organisms are like rivers of a constant replacement. It is not about sand on the beach, it is about the river of nutrients going through us. And that's the fascinating oneness of the biosphere. It goes through all of us. What has been in one of you might be now in me and tomorrow somewhere else. It's constantly exchanged. So it is a bit like, who was it? I think maybe Heraclitus or some Greek philosopher said, you can never step into the same river twice. Because when you go again, it's already fresh water. The river flows. So we are never the same organism. Within seconds we change. Some cell types, some tissue types have a very high turnover, a fast turnover. Others are extremely slow. It takes days, weeks, months, years. Some cells shed very fast. Every day we lose skin cells. They're here now. Sorry. Next one. So go back. These two challenges are in conflict. Taking care of hygiene means don't cycle the stuff, don't spread it. Making use of the nutrients, cycle it, spread it. You ate from there, shit here. But these two are in conflict with each other. And that's the problem of sanitation. And that is what humanity has been struggling with since they built the first city some 8 to 10,000 years ago, Jericho and whatnot. That's the problem. One thing is having enough food. Another thing is, what if you bring 100 people or 1,000 people or 5 million people together eating and shitting? You will build a mountain of shit. So where does that go? Because the food comes from out there. And now these 1 million people, 5 million people are sitting on a growing mountain of excreta. And that is the conflict. That should be cycled. But neither they cycle properly, those, the humans, us, nor do they properly take care of hygiene. Okay, next. This is for me one of the most important slides. You should keep that in mind. Sorry for the paleness of the screen, but this is important. This is soil and compost. And that is where the farmer starts with a handful of seeds, broadcasting seeds, whether it's vegetable or grains, whatever it is. These grains, these seeds, they carry enough nutrients in them for the first few days or weeks. Then there's enough moisture, there's germination, the seed opens, it grows towards the light, it develops a green leaf, and from then on it can take the energy of the sun. And what is the next step? It forms a root. Because now the nutrition is over, which was stored in that seed. From now on, it needs to feed from the ground, so it develops a root. So there's the shoot and there's the root. And from that, thank you, from that first seeding part, you develop your crops, vegetables, fruits, and grains. And then out of these crops, you process food. That's called food processing, and then you have a meal on the plate. Next, and if you You can also eat this grasshopper. You can also eat the grasshopper or whatsoever in Thailand and in Cambodia and Southeast Asia. They have lots of food like that. That has eaten here. So you can eat the grasshopper which has eaten that food. It is the same nutrients. Right? It is not suddenly something else, also animal. That is different. No, no, no. That animal has lived on the cabbage. And the next. Or the same food, that cellulose, the grass, the vegetation has gone through the body of the cow and we eat it as milk, drink it as milk, or as curd, or as a cheese, or we eat that meat, the mutton or the chicken or the cow, whatsoever. It's the same stream, the same cycle of nutrients. Yeah, whether we eat this or that, the source is the same. Next,
Can the cow dung also carry pathogen?
cow dung can, but not typically pathogens for humans. I think with tuberculosis they are discussing whether the human tuberculosis and the cattle tuberculosis are closely related and it could carry it or something. But in general, cow dung does not carry diseases for you.
Is it?
Tetanus, tetanus is in soils and in dung. But it is not typically the cow dung is the carrier of tetanus. Tetanus is everywhere in the soil. Yes. What was it?
Is it the same with other animals? So
Same with
is
other
it,
animals. Yes, yes. If you are not a mammal, if you are not a human, if you are another mammal or a vertebrate or even non-vertebrate, it is in principle the same. You take from somewhere and you build up your body with it.
no, but like how do you say it with the carrying, like with
Carrying.
cattle?
Oh, that's a super interesting question because with the COVID, everybody is discussing where it comes from. And there is another issue. That is our invasion into balanced ecosystems, how we disturb them. If we go into the Congo and look for copper, and then the bats fly out of the cave, then suddenly there is a new COVID in town. Yeah. And then the poor people who lived next to that cave, they have nothing. They used to hunt in that area in the jungle, and now the mining industry has destroyed that jungle, and now they are what? What are they supposed to do? Well, they can catch a rare monkey and sell it for many dollars and make money on that, and then they are called poachers. So it's tricky, yeah, it's very complex. I don't want to go into that.
Yeah.
Yes.
About the pathogens, so you mentioned that human feces has pathogens for humans. Do other animals, their feces carry pathogens at least for their own species, or
Sure.
they just
And some we spread to animals, and some the animals spread to us. There's quite a soft border. Yeah?
Can I ask you? I have a question.
Yeah.
So can we eat the source in a certain dose or something? Is it good directly eating the source?
The source, what do
soil.
you mean?
The soil.
The soil? No, we can't. Our body cannot make use of it. That is different. Our body cannot feed on. Our body needs all that stuff. Our body needs that development. The sun energy is here. It is not in the soil. Our calories, which I spend by hopping around here and gesticulating, I'm not getting from the soil. I'm getting from the plants that have harvested it out of the atmosphere. It's called photosynthesis. The chlorophyll, the green of the plant, catches, with the help of sun energy, can make the carbon dioxide of the air into their sugars, and their starches, and their cellulose.
It's also similar to the water situation, no? Like when you eat fruits with a lot of liquid or water, it's also taking the water from the ground and it's kind of putting it in the fruit.
Sure, but it is, I would say, this is even more complex. a living organism, the vertebrates typically, or the mammals, we need food, rich food, highly diverse food to build up. Now we come to it back, our strengths. Yeah, next slide, and next click. Or our wits. Next, our beauty. Yeah. And then we have excreta. Yeah. And then at one point, life is over at the age of 50 or 100 or anywhere in between. And then all that which is left over is metabolized, taken apart by the dung beetle and the earthworm and the microbes, and click please, and that is back into soil. And you give one more click, and that's the point. This is simplified, but it is pretty correct, except for water, because the water cycle is a little bit different than this. I don't take water out of here, yeah. And it is for carbon, it is also different. Carbon, the element carbon is the base for all living organisms. Our biggest, our most common element, the one which is the greatest mass in our body, is carbon. And where do we get carbon from? Not typically from soil, but from the air. That is what the plants catch through photosynthesis. That is our base. We live on air, on carbon from the air. And water. Our biggest part is water. Two-thirds of our body is water. The next biggest part is carbon, air. And the rest, all the rest, is soil from the soil structure. I put here nitrogen because nitrogen is also typically sourced from the air and fixed by bacteria in the ground, and then it is for us taken from the ground. Then the plants take it through the ground, but the bacteria fix it through the ground. And one more click, in case some of you don't like how I distributed strength and beauty, I have an alternative. But it's the same cycle of nutrients. Okay, next slide. Okay, how does flush toilet technology deal with our excreta? It's a package deal. It's kind of, you want the whole thing or you don't even get started. We all know it has to do with the flush toilet. That is how it starts. Everybody in a town knows sanitation means a toilet. Of course, that's what it means. And then, click once, it means water supply. And water supply depends on power supply. Click once. It has to come from some overhead with pressure, or it is under pressure in the pipes. So it is not just water. Or you bring that bucket of water up to your 5th floor, and then you flush the toilet and then you turn down. I don't think that is being done in towns. So it is water supply, it is power supply. Next. Then there are drains. They go somewhere. Drains, connected, sewers. And if you are all alone somewhere in a big chunk of forest like Churchill or any other place of our green belt, the settler and the soak pit are almost overdoing it. For a single person, I would say you don't need a soak pit, you don't need a settler. But if you say a small community in the forest, you better have a settler where the ship settles again, and then the overflow goes into a soak pit, half treated already, half digested, and from there it goes into the soil. But let's talk about other issues or other scenarios out there. Next click, please. Sewerage. Many sewers together make a sewer system. That's called sewerage. And that needs power supply too. And that needs also operation and maintenance. Next slide. And at the end of the sewers is a sewage treatment plant. And that also needs operation and maintenance and power supply. And lastly, what is in your settler and what is in the settler of all systems still needs fecal sludge management. Click. And in Auroville, since 20 years, we have a system. And so Johnny is much aware of that system. We can come to that later. But we have a system of fecal sludge pumping and then making something out of it. Next slide, please. Another slide to illustrate conventional flush toilet technology with a centralized sewage treatment. There it starts with it. Click. This is the Earth. That is the Moon over there. The distance, this is accurate proportions of sizes and distance. The distance from Earth to Moon is around 400,000 kilometers. 400,000 kilometers is the length of the sewers in UK.
What?
UK, United Kingdom, Great Britain. Great Britain has sewer lines in total of about 1 meter, and it has 60 to 70 million inhabitants. India has more than 20 times as many. So if we want to build sewer lines for the whole of India, we have to build sewer lines 21, 22 times to the moon. It's not very realistic, but it seems to be one of the ambitions. Next one. In big towns, that is how the big sewers look. It is not this pipe and then this pipe and this, and then it stops. No, it is 5 meter diameter, 7 meter diameter. It is cathedral in the netherworlds. And it costs as much as a cathedral and needs as much engineering and operation and maintenance and energy supply. Next. And at the end of that sewer line, you have sewage treatment plants, which are as big as a university campus, or 2 or 3 for the big cities. So, click. If centralized, you have high investments, you need high skilled engineering for the building as well as for the operation and maintenance. You need high energy, it has a high energy demand, and you have high costs in the running of it, in operational management. And that, because of the last one, is why many sewage treatment plants in many towns all over the world at one point fail, or in India often are not operating because it's too costly to switch it on. Okay, next slide. Operation and maintenance of sewerage, of the sewer lines. It needs protective gear and high-tech technology again for equipment. If no one takes care of that protective gear, then we have another way. We have another way of doing it, and that is how unfortunately still being done in India. Not only in India. And every year, a few, I don't know, in the range of what, 2, 3 a month, or 10 a month, I don't remember. Dalits die in our shift.
Yeah, exactly. They also use the past Dalit people to do this work.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Because they're seen as the lower people.
That's what I'm saying. That's the whole point. We come to that. We come to the socio-cultural background for that. Yes. Next slide, please. Conventional sanitation, flush plus centralized systems with some discharge, contribute to the eutrophication of water bodies. What is eutrophication? Anybody of you who ever had to take care of a little fish, goldfish or guppy in an aquarium would know it. If you have a goldfish and you give it this fish feed, you have to make sure to feed enough and not too much. If you feed too much, goldfish might eat more, as much as it can, but it will also shit more. Or at one point it cannot eat it, and the food will uneaten sink to the ground. What happens with the excessive excreta and the excessive unused food? It has to break down. How does it break down? By oxidation. It means it will deplete the water body of oxygen. And then you will see your goldfish belly down, belly upside, and not doing much movement anymore. Then you have a eutrophicated and overfed water body. Eutrophication means feeding too well. The problem of water bodies, of water ecosystems, is that the the limiting factor of their health, like a coral reef, 1,000 different species, crystal clear water. That water body should not have nutrients dissolved in the water. The limiting factor is the oxygen dissolved in the water. While the limiting factor for your forest soil here is the nutrients in the water.
Isn't your thing
You want help?
So what we are doing nowadays is we deplete soils of nutrients for our food or for other reasons we mismanage them. But what is in our excreta is added to what goes into the water bodies, the rivers or the lakes and the seashore. And this map shows eutrophicated, hypoxic, low in oxygen seashores all over the world. In India, this is an old picture, they are growing more and more. Hypoxic seashores. Go on. You have to interrupt or anything, then let's.
for the rain? You have to just go down and get something out of there.
Okay.
You're gonna be back in like a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. Pause for a minute.
I can pause. If we have enough energy
60
supply.
seconds.
Summary of the effect of flush sanitation and centralized sewage treatment. We use water for flushing. Imagine, we shipped about 250 grams a day. For the transport of 250 grams excreta, we flush in the normal flush system minimum 5, 6, 7 liters or more in older systems. And usually water of the highest quality. Next problem. The bio-waste, which is full of nutrients, is not regarded as a resource, but as a waste. Let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of it. That's a problem. One of the macronutrients, the most important nutrients for all plants, for all crops, is N and P, nitrogen and phosphorus. If you don't have enough nitrogen and phosphorus, forget about all the rest, the calcium and the iron and the selenium and the boron, etc., etc. That is the biggest need in quantity.
Phosphorus and what?
Nitrogen.
Nitrogen.
So that is why the chemical fertilizer is always given sold to the farmers is N, P, and K. K is kalium, potassium.
Why is that bad though?
There's nothing bad about it. The problem is if you feed only the macronutrients into a soil, you change the living organisms in the soil massively.
It's more than
It is one-sided. It is one-sided. If you let the microbes in the soil fix the nitrogen out of the air with the right plant systems, then you have a healthy ecosystem in the soil. If you bring from outside kilos of urea, of nitrogen-containing molecules, then you give a very one-sided shock of food, which the crop tells you, I'm big, am I not? But it doesn't mean it has more nutrients, it is just bigger, blown up.
There are also unhealthy variants of this fertilizer.
The fertilizer itself is irrelevant which type. It is NPK usually. The problem you're talking about pesticides, that's another issue. That's another problem. This is not toxic. The NPK fertilizer is not toxic, but it is one-sided get food. It's not integrated into the life system.
Your 250-gram deposit,
Yes,
how much of that is water?
most of it.
So it dries down to how many grams?
That I don't know, but I know from the toilets we build, the big heap becomes very little after 1 year. It's less than half.
But there wouldn't be just water loss, that would be composting.
It is the breakdown and the water loss altogether. Yes, Tommy, you want to
Do you distinguish between fertilizer and compost?
Well, fertilizer in the official market, it means a high concentration of NPK plus plus plus. Compost has, of course, has fertilizer value, but compost is actually so much more than just fertilizer.
But I always understood compost was a living thing.
It is.
Yeah,
It's full of microbes.
but it's living when it's wet, though, eh?
At a certain, yes, I mean, some survive even when it dries down, but
And
if
then
you-
come back to life when you put water.
some don't.
See, because ideally, when you were talking about 60 degrees, ideally you would compost your human shit in a pile that gets up to 60 degrees, and that would keep it alive. But by drying it, you're turning it into a fertilizer, aren't you? And then you will recompost it.
It is not much of a fertilizer. It's a very poor fertilizer, but it makes it risk-free to be spread.
Ah.
It is not a big source of a fertilizer, human shit.
But urine is, eh?
But urine is. I come to that.
Okay.
The point is N, P, and K, nitrogen, phosphorus, and kalium, potassium. Look at phosphorus. Phosphorus, every cell, every living organism needs phosphorus. In the DNA, in the transfer of energy, phosphorus is always involved. There's no single living cell without phosphorus or without N. And where does the phosphorus come from? From quarrying of rocks, rock phosphate. The rock phosphate sources are, how do you say, limited. They're not infinite, finite. So in the next decades, at some point, there won't be any more. And some people guess it is about 30 years, another day it's about 80 years. It doesn't matter how many, whether it's one generation or two generations more. The point is, it is not sustainable to recover phosphorus from an obviously limited source and neglect all the phosphorus that we pee and shit. That is non-sustainable. That is why recovery, cycling of nutrients becomes so important. Phosphorus is a big reason. And the fertilizer companies know all that. So
In a normal diet, would feces be predominantly carbohydrate?
not carbohydrate, but carbon, fibers,
Carbon.
fibrage. Shit is mainly fibrage, carbon, high in carbon, 98% of it.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's roughage. It's the stuff which you have not digested. The rest you have taken out. You have made good use of it. We come to that. The point is, water is used wastefully. The resources, the nutrient elements are wasted away. And additionally, when it is released into water, flush toilet, treatment, rivers, water bodies, etc., it eutrophicates to those ecosystems. Next click, please. And this is an example. This is the Baltic Sea. For the last 20, 30 years, they have always this huge algae bloom on the Baltic Sea, and the ship and the ferries have to plow through the algae blooms across the Baltic Sea between Germany, Denmark, Sweden, etc.
Is actually difficult.
For them, it is not difficult, but it is scary to see it every year again happening. Algae bloom. Algae bloom is a sign of a eutrophicated water body. The fish are dying. A few algae survive, typically close to the surface with some oxygen and sunlight. Most algae
Wait,
do
where?
that.
Sweden, one more.
Baltic Sea is between Sweden
Yeah,
and,
no, I
and
just
Poland, and Russia, and Lithuania, and whatnot. And then this is the China Sea algae bloom. And the tourists have fun, they bath in the algae. For them, it's like, isn't it funny? But it's actually a catastrophe. And that is the end of the catastrophe. That is a photo from, I think, 2015 or so. On the Californian coast, every year some seals were dying in front of the bathing tourists. And a few years ago, they found out why they are dying with fits, with seizures. And they die in front of the tourists, and they found it is the toxin from the algae. So they are lucky. This is a non-toxic algae. They are not so lucky. They have a toxic algae. They are not algae eaters, the seals. They eat animals, crabs, fish. So in the food chain of the crab and the fish is already so much that these animals, mammals of what 30 kilo, half our weight, die from toxicity of algae, from eutrophication of an ocean. It's quite alarming. At the moment, they have other roles, I
This
suppose.
toxic algae is also like not a man-made thing, it's in the nature.
No, algae are there, but they are the only ones that survive if we eutrophiate the water bodies.
Do whales eat these? Yeah, are there?
I'm not sure. Maybe the plankton in the deep sea, they might not be affected by some more surface living toxic algae.
Is it
In the
not?
end, it is always a question of volumes and proportions, no? What kills you.
Isn't it of some value that it would have some nutritious value that you could just skim the top off and use it to fertilize or
Oh, I'm sure someone is doing the research on that.
okay.
I haven't done it.
Off topic.
Okay, next click. Part of the summary, flush sanitation and centralized sewage treatment are expensive in investment and expensive in operation and maintenance. Require human handling of those sewage. There is no sewer line that where not someone has to take care that it really runs freely. So if someone in the town says, I have no problem, I shit, I flush, what do I have to do with it? Someone deals with your shit. Someone deals with your sewer. Someone has to handle raw sewage. That means the sewer lines. Click, because there is one more photo that illustrates the human handling of sewer lines. And when the system is left incomplete, which is often the case, then it creates new problems. Please click. 2 photos. That is sewage out of sewer lines that go into the Adia, and that is half-treated or untreated sewage of the rich Chennai residents. The Adia, at certain times in the year, is an open sewer. It's not a river. And the last one is, of course, if you have the tanker that suck the sludge, the fecal sludge, you never know what they do next. In Auroville, we have some control on it, and we have dealt with it, I would say, pretty decent for the last 20 years, with all its ups and downs, better than many other places in India, I'm sure. But this is what often happens. Here is the sewage sludge, the sludge pumping, and then they go around somewhere, and
Sometimes in the rivers you can.
that's the best, yes. That's why we have toilets, so that the rivers don't get dirty, but in the end, it is all brought back into the rivers. Yes.
By the way, we having taken the sludge in our bottom field for what 5 years, we finally dug that soil up and turned it all over and planted it in trees. They all died.
Why?
The trees died. How is that possible?
Right.
Shampoo, bloody
Yeah.
soap, extra Himalaya, delicious almond smell.
The point is, what we have probably to do some treatment of that to sort out something, and then co-composting. It is not that what is in human shit. It is if it kills the plant, it has killed the human before.
No, it's not just the human shit. That sludge that you were receiving was also from Solar Kitchen and all the soap.
Yeah, it's mixed with all the soap and all the
Soap,
sanitizing.
It's not as strongly a shampoo, not poo.
Ordinary soaps are not the big problem. Whoever says anything else in
How
this
about like
community.
bleaching and like
Things like that, yes.
Yeah, because all this water
Sanitizers, etc. Yes,
it's
that
all
can be.
mixed. in
What
one
about
thing.
this sulfate, lather and sulfate, the isolate? Lather and sulfate.
What is that?
Chemical. It's a chemical which makes the soap bubbly.
Oh, it's one of the detergents or something. I don't know. But the point is that most of these chemicals in soaps and shampoos, they are broken down. Nature knows how to take them apart, but it takes much longer time. So in the end, it is back to basic elements. But if you have some very long surviving molecules that stay toxic and stay complete for a long time, some medicines do it, some others are broken down within short time. If I take an aspirin or ibuprofen, probably in my urine there might be still 20% of it. You could have my urine and you treat it against your headache.
Yeah.
It's being done. I mean, the prisoners in jail, they know that, what is it, speed, cocaine, I think, survives a lot, 50% the urine. And when they are all on speed, then they share the urine. There's a Mongol tribe, they use psychedelic mushrooms. And most of it is excreted in the urine. And they celebrate parties, community parties, and they let the urine go around and they stay on the trip for 3, 4, 5 days.
Wow.
So it depends on what is broken down in the urine and what is already fully digested back to basic elements. And I'm not the chemist and the biochemist who can tell this for most of the ingredients of our weird consumer products. I do not know. But much of it gets broken down with the question of when, in what time. In practice, that is what I say here, this system also encourages the use of sanitizers. And that is probably one of the worst byproducts. The sanitizers means what? Biocides, life killers, germ killers. When there are biocides, when there are germ killers, they kill a lot of other stuff too. That means they are killers of living cells. That is what it means. So if these things survive a lot, they can do a lot of damage.
In the coronavirus time, it must have gotten quite bad, right?
What in the what?
In the COVID time?
I think so. The use of sanitizers, if it was the wrong type, can be really bad. Alcohol-based would be the simplest, but then the alcohol-based sanitizer is more expensive than other sanitizers, much cheaper, but much more toxic. World Health Organization said water and soap or alcohol-based sanitizers. And then all kind of stuff is on the market.
Yes, I just see there is interesting question, so we continue, but just to know that at 3 o'clock there is a 2, so like at 2:30 or 2:40 we need to stop.
Yes. Maybe this will come to it later again. Next. Summary. Flush sanitation, centralized sewage treatment. What is the advantage of it? It is convenient for the user. You have a toilet, you go for your shit, you flush, it's done. No further thought. That is the convenience. That is why you have only these also toilets in Paris, in some Swiss towns, and I think some German towns. You go in, you do your business, you go out, and by going out, the whole thing is flushed and sanitized. It's a wasteful system of chemical sanitizer and water. So very convenient for the user. And
also condoms and menstrual pads and
it is not exactly meant
bandages
for
and
that.
band-aids, old saris.
Yes. And of course, the liberal use of water makes hygiene management easy. There's still some dirt, some more water, still some dirt, some more flushing. So that is the advantage, I would say. The advantage is not the perfect hygiene. Someone has to deal with the not so hygienic sewers and sewage, etc. Next slide. What's the alternative? Something that is called ecological sanitation. Yes. On an aeroplane, you have a flush toilet. Not so bad. One button, push, and after your business, it's about 1 liter and everything is gone. Water saving, but adding chemical sanitizers. In regard to water saving, you can say this is eco-friendly. But then when the plane lands and all that stuff goes into a chemical treatment, of course, that's not eco-friendly. Next. So any system that aims at optimum hygiene, of course, reuse of plant nutrients and biomass as brilliant, as fast as possible, plus saving water, anything like that we can call ecological sanitation. Some step in that direction is eco-san. Next. Here in our context, I only talk about urine diversion and dry toilets. Click. That is the model which is there also in the exhibition. stool, what is it called? The drop hole for the feces. The urine is separately drained, it is not mixed. And that is because we are living in a society of washers and not of wipers. That is for the anal cleansing water. Bum wash. Call it bum wash. Next.
Like strains up.
No, it's just a drain. It's just a drain.
Oh.
It is not yet the faucet. That you can add. But that bum wash needs only half a liter. It doesn't need 5 or 10 liters. Yeah, like the flush of the. Important. Drying. The less moisture, the easier bad odors can be avoided. If you have observed when people do open defecation around the villages all through the year, in the dry, sunny time, it doesn't stink of shit out there. Not at all. There is no shit smell in the village. But sometimes after 3-4 months, hardly any rain, and then the first rains, then you get a little bit, what is going on here? Because all these deposits are suddenly moistened and produce their volatile odors, their volatile substances in the form of malodor. So the drier, the easier to control bad smell. To keep that dry and to make your stool, which is mainly water dry, you should add a handful or a little shovel of sawdust or coir dust or ashes or dry soil or anything else that absorbs moisture immediately. I have put my nose into some of these drop holes in the village. In well-operating dry toilets, there is no smell. If that dry matter goes inside, it's smellful.
But the place is, the area of the tank inside is huge, right? It's quite like a 1 meter or something. And then you put like few handfuls.
No,
Okay.
it is only on the fresh shit, handful, that's it. If one is not enough, maybe 2. It doesn't matter. Point is, let it dry and not produce smell. That's the logic. Duration of complete sanitization 12 to 18 months. And that is now to come back to that question. If you have filled a feces receptacle, a composting chamber or a shit chamber, if you have filled it and the last fresh deposit, afterwards you have to wait for 12 months. What do you do for the next 12 months? You need the second toilet. You need 2 toilets. That is a big disadvantage in regard to spare space which you need. Or you have a bucket or a container, a barrel that is full, and then you move it away and put the fresh there. And then you can keep that away from anybody and let it dry for 12 to 18 months.
And you can adjust wheels under it, so it's easier to move.
Yes. We have thought about all these options. The point is, when we build these things for the villages, we don't want them to have to think too much about moving fresh shit around. Because that is exactly what they wouldn't like. If you want to do it for your house, that is your decision, brilliant. But that is not a system which I recommend easily for the general public. As I said, if you are for your own house, you can decide anyway. There are many ways to go about this. But what you can recommend to a community, urban or rural, that's a different issue. You have to give recommendations which are as foolproof and simple as possible.
So now that there are 3 holes, where is the other? So the main hole goes down, and that will become the compost. Now,
Yes.
where does the rest go?
Yes, and the urine is drained separately. Here is a jerry can. There's the urine drain without anything else. And this picture is there from 12 years ago, the first toilet we built in Krishnagiri district. And that farmer who had that toilet, he didn't put golden liquid there in that container. He didn't want that stupid question, so he put a cement bag around. But you were not allowed to go there and take it away. This is my fertilizer. I know what it does in the rice field. So it is good fertilizer. Yeah? But he wrapped something around. And this drain is the anal wash, the bum wash water, which is very little. You can go into a mini soap pit, and the end of the drain goes into the gravel, so there's no open shit flakes. It's all inside the ground, and it is so little moisture that it will not contaminate your groundwater. It is half a liter. It's never wet around. That's it. The urine has to be collected regularly when the can is full or when you have a big
Weren't
tank.
you saying that the urine is not so good or something?
No, the urine is brilliant. The urine is the
Somebody
fertilizer.
was saying that the urine is too much, it has too much
So
salt.
that depends. That depends on whether you have the urine of 100 drunken men on one little flower, it is too much. But if you let them pee on a huge rice field, it is all welcome. Why is it too much salt? Salt is the issue. Because of all our food we take from soils, which have to go back to the soil, which one we do not take from soil? From the ocean. Sodium chloride, salt. So if you pee too much, if you give too much concentrated urine on a small area of land, the first issue could be too much soil. But in practice, for a big farmer, it's never the issue. And it is definitely not the issue in a monsoon climate. After the tsunami, we had some 5-10 kilometers inland. The world was the earth, the soil was saline. And the farmer said, our soils are spoiled, they are saline, we can't grow what we used to grow. After 3-4 years, everybody was back to normal cropping. Why? Because the monsoon had all diluted it and washed it. It's done. It is not that it stays forever in that soil. So you can pee 10 times on that same little flower, but then you give it some rest for the next monsoon. So it's again a question of concentration and proportions. Next one, yes.
About the concentration thing that you mentioned in the scientific context. In terms of speaking of the nutrition, like the fertilizing value of compost, is that affected positively or in any way with menstrual blood? If
I would say
in a
menstrual blood
good
would be
portion?
such a welcome addition. Bring it to me. It is what is usually missing in my garden compost because we don't eat enough meat. We have no animal waste in our compost. It is only plant waste. And the nitrogen phosphorus content is probably extremely low. So all animal waste, including menstrual blood, is most welcome. Farmers buy bone meal and blood meal and whatnot to mix into their compost because that is the source of nitrogen and phosphorus.
And sorry, just as addition, as far as I know, the menstrual blood is sterilized, but as soon as it gets out of the body, it has all these bacteria
On the way out,
in the way out. Yeah.
So
So
what?
and I know an artist in Netherlands. He had a pot of a plant, 2 pots. One has been filled with blood, like menstrual blood, and it was blooming like crazy.
Sure. Got the right filter, yeah, sure. The point is, microbes, bacteria, viruses, most of them, at least 1,000 times more, are healthy or harmless than that one pathogen. So bacteria are part of life. Bacteria in the soil are a must, are a need. There's one pathogen amongst 1,000 species, maybe, or maybe amongst 10,000 species. We don't even know. We don't know how many there are.
In your book, Liquid Gold, they say dilute 1 to 10. Do you recommend that?
As a rule of thumb, but let's say for you as to the small garden, maybe that's a good advice. But for the big farmer who has maybe from 1 or 2 families, we made one trial with a farmer in the field. There was no damage. It was not enough urine to bring in enough nitrogen. So usually nitrogen is your benchmark. You should bring enough nitrogen out there. That is why we use animal waste, cow dung and elephant dung and pee and whatnot. It is the animal the stuff which is typically not in the plant, the N and the P, the nitrogen and the phosphorus, comes typically mainly from the animal waste. And it is mecca. Now, if there's too much salt, because we humans add salt from the sea into our food, we could overdo a small patch of ground. Yes. Then you flush it with water, with irrigation, and it's fine. It's not that this is a regular problem of urine. It's not a problem. Besides water required for any heating, UDDT use requires practically no water. There are some figures, 5 to 10 liters a day. If you calculate this for the population of Chennai, 9 and 10 million, it builds up to something, yes. 90% of the water used in a flush technology are definitely saved. Go on. Human excreta, this is the important part. Contain the plant nutrients, the macronutrients, the most important one, N, P, and K, potassium, kalium, and all the others. Of course, we eat them, we pee them, we excrete them. Plant nutrients in a person's excreta are sufficient to produce the food required by one person. It doesn't mean you have to drink the urine and eat your shit. But what goes in goes out. The nutrients are in weight identical. They have to be. Otherwise something is wrong or our basic chemistry is off. Human excreta in average 500 liters urine a year, 50 liters feces a year, contain about 4 kilo nitrogen, half a kilo phosphorus, 1 kilo potassium. These are yearly figures, and they're very rough because it depends so much on what you eat and how much you eat and what is your body size. Are you 100 kilo or 50 kilo? And how many plates you fill and what is your food? So it varies usually, but this is average figures. 70% of the nutrients are excreted in the urine. Next slide. Then I checked in the net. This is what we excrete. What do we need? Go on. Requirements per year. It says we need a 70 kilo male requires 56 gram proteins per day. Then I calculate this, it comes to about 9 grams nitrogen, and that comes to about 3.3 kilo of nitrogen per year. So it is not out of range. It was, there it was, what was it? Nitrogen 4 kilo, here we have almost 3.5 kilo. Somewhere it matches. Maybe some of this is the nitrogen of the bacteria in our excreta. Maybe, I don't know.
I think we have to wind up.
Yeah.
But just a practical question. Have you ever considered how this could be applicable to apartments?
Click. 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 Click.
Such beautiful pictures.
Click. That is from our work in the villages. Click. 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 Challenges. In an urban scenario with limited garden space, the need for service providers who make use of the urine and use of the full composting chambers, and designing technology for multi-story buildings. They exist. Apartments, multi-story buildings, they exist, but they are rather rare examples. One building in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and one in Berlin, and one. It is not that it is mass technology. It is not mainstream technology, but the technologies exist.
Right.
In Ladakh, they have simple chutes for dry shitting from first and second floor. But Ladakh is dry and cold.
Yeah.
We don't have smell issues like this climate. Next.
I imagine if you had just a well-designed sort of bucket that opened when you used it and closed when you did it, and you carried it out and then shot it into a thing.
In the West, there are available ready-made packages, a
Yeah.
bucket, some EM bokashi, some shovel, some this, some that, and people say, you have no idea, but here behind that chair, that is actually my toilet. It can be done.
Yeah.
But then the whole package again is a plastic designed something, and I'm not a fan of that. And if I think of introducing this anywhere here in the villages, and then one of these things breaks, then we have another big chunk of broken plastic which is not recycled. dumped somewhere because no one wants to have to do with it. It's not a nice image for you.
Okay.
Friend of mine grew up in New
Better
Zealand.
than doing like nothing.
Nothing, what is nothing? Everybody, general mindset. Learning that microbes are part of life. There is a concept of hygiene which is wrong. So I give whole lectures only on that topic. The human microbiome that lives in and on us is huge. 1.5 kilo of our body weight. 1 to 1.5 kilo of our body weight is bacteria. And they are part of our healthy system. The other problem in the Indian society, overcoming the so-called purity pollution gradient of class and caste. It is not that it's unique to India. No one in Germany wants to deal with sewage. But once you are the sewage worker, you get a good pay, and you get social benefits, and you get provident fund. You are not suddenly out of the system and you are treated like the Dalit. Didn't want to use the other word. Involving the educated and the wealthy in concerns of sewage and in concerns of solid waste management is a big challenge in India. And respecting that physical work is as good as white collar work. That is a big challenge for India. It is not in Tamil Nadu, it's still awful. No one wants to have skill training for a manual job. In Germany, I know from my childhood, my father was vice principal of a big school, a village school. He had the same pay. He was not richer and not poorer than the master carpenter of the village, the master mason of the village, the master this, the master that. It was all the same. It was equal people. And here, that is not yet part of the culture.
Is it still like that?
Yes, it is like that. But of course, I haven't been there regularly for the last 32 years. In Auroville, integration of nutrient cycle into urban planning and into farm and forest management. I mean, one thing is our sludge and then having composted somewhere. Why should it have to happen 10 years on the same spot? Why not have 1 year on this, and then go to another forest plot, and 1 year on that, and 1 year on that, and why not do it in such a way that you do a systematic follow-up? What is in it? What is the problem? Get the plastics out, get the condoms out, the rubbers and whatnot. All this is possible. Half a year, 1 year ago, I got a visit from TBC representatives. They talked to me very sweetly about what we should do. They asked for my feedback. I sent them a proposal how we could go about it. I never heard of it anymore. And you know who they are, and you have them as a visitor in this Mela. Okay. And the last thing is design of a UDT in new residential buildings, not for a single forest dweller, not for your forest communities, in that so-called city area, house next to house, apartment next to house. What is our design there? And the architects have not yet woken up to that challenge. Whenever I worked with 1 or 2 architects, it was the residents who said, no, better not. Then fine, but we should find that little club of residents in it. Let's do it, let's try it.
Yeah, one experimental apartment block.
You have one in your house?
I lived in that house after it was built, so I had no say in what was there before. And I will not dismantle a flush toilet for building a dry toilet, because why should I? Because it is a decentralized treatment system and the water is well used in all the gardens. I lived in Grace and I lived in Krapla. I did these 2 examples of Grace not so good. Krapla is a good example of a good reuse in the gardens of all the sewage water of the sewage treatment.
Do you still live in that?
I do live in Krapla.
I also live in Prague. and the garden water is really stinky sometimes.
Yes, it is. And then what can you do? Actually, in 5 minutes it's gone. But you could also spray EM, it would be gone faster. It needs 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatsoever. Yes.
I designed a dry toilet in my house in Delhi when I lived there and lived there. So answer questions after this outside about how you can use it in house. Very simple design, costs nothing, and
Say your name. Say your name.
Deepa, my name is Deepa, and yeah, we can talk about it. I've had it for about 3 years now.
And in Pondi, we have an interesting establishment that is the Ashram Sports Ground in Kuttukupon, Mediatek, next to, closer to Pondi. I think it's part of Pondi already. Kuru, who is in charge of the maintenance of the Ashram Sports Ground, he listened to me about dry toilet and flush-free urinals, and he immediately dismantled the flush from the urinals and harvest the urine of the male urinals, uses it on the Ashram Sports Ground. No one knows it, no one smells it. Some people know it by now, but he did not even talk about it. Why should I? No one smells it. Who asked me? And the urinal, the toilets are completely smell-free. Twice a day, he sprays a bit of urine. That's it. So things can be done. It is not like, oh, this sounds also nice and let's keep it for some poor villages. No, things can be done. And it's not too difficult. I think that's it.
Good, great, thank you.
Is there any more questions outside?